All right, so brings us to the number 2 issue. The oil cooler, which is right, where's my oil cooler? Right there. This is the oil cooler. Okay. The B6, B7 generation, and I think other generations also of the Audi that use the 4.2 liter V8 have this oil cooler that I just showed you, and this oil cooler attaches to right here. Okay, that oil, these 2 holes here flow oil through the cooler. All right, in a circular path. Same cooler has coolant flowing through it also, so it's like a heat exchanger. So the heat exchanger cools the oil. Oil is comes under pressure out of the engine block, cools off, goes back into the engine block. And the only thing stopping this oil from splattering and leaking and going everywhere are these 2 little rubber O-rings. They are super small, super tiny. They cost about $1.50 each, I think, or $1, something like that. $1 each, super cheap, right? But the amount of work and labor, and it's unbelievable. The amount of work that you got to put in to remove that oil cooler, to replace those 2 little, dollar gaskets. It's insane. The whole front end has to come off. The alternator has to come out. There's a bracket between the alternator and the oil cooler that has to come out. These hoses, you're gonna have to replace every single coolant hose because they're all trash. That one there is it's unbelievably difficult to remove. This one wasn't so bad, but because this is leaking oil everywhere, it deteriorates these hoses. So the minute you remove all this stuff, you have to replace them. They're not expensive, but it just makes it takes longer. It's more tedious, more stuff you got to do. But anyways, so to remove this alternator, right, and get to this oil cooler, you got to remove all this stuff, everything. And because I was in here for the water pump, I just took advantage of everything being off to get this done. So let me give you a look at the tensioner pulley. So this is the old idler pulley, and this is the old belt tensioner pulley. And this thing was just, listen to it, it was just complete trash. Okay, absolutely no bearings left in there, and it was making a racket. I'm gonna replace it with this one here, which is in much better condition, a lot smoother, and hopefully it's going to quiet everything up. So it is used, but it was replaced recently, so it's not that old. This is like the original equipment that it came with back in 2005 or 2006. The idler pulley that I have is brand new, and it's genuine. All these parts are genuine. You don't want to replace that stuff with aftermarket stuff. Just use the original equipment. Really, that's that's if you have this front end off for anything, those are the major things you want to replace. Get the new O-rings, idler pulley, tensioner pulley. Obviously, if you remove the water supply pipe, you got to redo all these gaskets. There's a gasket right in there, a little blue one that goes in there, and there's another gasket right here, and they're internal gaskets, like O-rings. So that's it. This is what it looks like. I searched and searched all over the internet and YouTube for these videos to see, so I can orientate myself. Couldn't find any, so this is why I'm doing this one. Hopefully it'll help out somebody else having to do this job. It's not difficult. Don't be worried or nervous about it. I know I was, but as I went, it wasn't bad. Yeah, another thing I did too, I replaced the starter Starter is a very difficult job to do without having to do this stuff. And and to replace a starter, you really don't need to remove any of this, but it makes it so much easier. So really, all you have to do is just remove the engine mount bracket, which is right here. It's only 3 bolts. That bracket comes off. You disconnect it from the engine mount. You leave the engine mount attached to the bracket that attaches it to the engine block. All right. Once you take this plate off, you can get at these hex bolts. There's 3 bolts, hex bolts right there. There's one back here too, and then there's one on the other side, which makes 3. You remove those, very easy. The whole bracket and mount come down, and it leaves the starter wide open, and it's so easy to remove. No issues. But I was having sporadic issues with the starter, so I bought a new one, installed it, remounted everything. That's done. Not difficult at all. And that's it, really. These when you do remove this bracket here, you got to make sure that they're stretch bolts, so the bolts have to be replaced. You got to use new ones, and then you have to torque them. You torque them to spec, stretches the bolt out, and it's because it does hold the engine, obviously, and it's part of the subframe. So you got to make sure that these things are torqued and those bolts are good, that they're not going to fail on you. And really, that's it. I'll put up some more videos on a couple of the things that I did to this car. I've done a lot. Replaced all the major. We'll go over the major gaskets and seals that you got to do on these cars. It's mandatory, especially if it's 100,000 miles or more. Those are things that you got to do a lot of preventative maintenance in order to avoid catastrophic failures in the future. All right, but that's it for now.